Whispers pierced the quiet like a blade in the faint light of a remote room. Among mysterious characters who thought their remarks would never leave those walls, a secret gathering took place. However, Destiny had other ideas. An invisible ear heard every whispered detail, every premeditated action, and every evil scheme directed at you. The intentions were as sinister as the darkness outside, and the stakes were tremendous. And this wasn't just a conference. It was a ticking time bomb, and the fuse had been lit as the conspirators scattered, not realizing their plans were already rushing toward the authorities. The game was altered, and the police were notified. The truth was rapidly approaching, and what had been intended to remain concealed was suddenly revealed. They believed that their remarks were secure, hidden away in the darkness. They were unaware that someone was eavesdropping, and that those same remarks had previously been released. First, your name was spoken in a casual, somewhat innocuous way. Then it was done again and again, with more venom and weight each time. The aim was evident in the wording. This was a roadmap for devastation, not just idle talk. They weren't expressing their grievances or exchanging thoughts. This was a premeditated, deliberate takedown that was intended to harm you. The tone deepened. The discussion intensified. What began as murmurs developed into a conspiracy. Like strategists before a fight, they planned it out. Every step intentional, and every move exact. Would they set you up, portray you as the bad guy, and get others to turn against you? Would they pose as friends in order to undermine your efforts, take your credit, and impede your advancement? Or was there something more sinister going on here? A plot to deprive you of everything: fraud, robbery, blackmail? Their voices were unhesitating. They were certain they would be successful. They exuded a sickening confidence, as if they had done this before, and it was second nature to them. Another target, another name on their list, another barrier to be removed. That's what you were. After then, the shift occurred, and they were unaware that they had crossed the border. Someone with a manipulable name was mentioned. They created a falsehood, something harmful, something unchangeable. They were planning a crime now, not simply chatting. A single syllable sealed their doom. A single word validated everything. There is no way to retract the communication if it is revealed. No deniability and clear purpose. Talking their way out of this would not work, since this was proof, not just talk. They chuckled like this was a game, like your demise was a farce. They spoke openly, recklessly, and fearlessly, without hesitation, without paranoia, without second-guessing. They really thought their idea was invincible. However, they were unaware that there was another person in the room, listening to everything. The weapon that would destroy them had only been their own words. The air felt thicker. Something changed. There was a strange discomfort when the whispers slowed. With a tense tapping of fingers on the table and narrowed eyes, one of them paused in the middle of their speech. There was a problem. It was too silent. Once replete with quiet whispers and assurance, the space seemed open, vulnerable, and as if someone or something invisible was observing. A moment of pause, a peek over the shoulder, a stealthy survey of the shadows. Were they too reckless? Was there anybody who heard? The others took note, and a glimmer of uncertainty appeared on their faces. The quiet communicated more than words could. There was a strange feeling. One of them moved around in their chair, cleared their throat, and glanced toward the doorway once more. Was there someone else there that they shouldn't have been? Or was it just paranoia? They were at the wrong place at the wrong moment, or even the right place at the worst time. But there was a mistake, a coincidence, or a twist of destiny. They were still, motionless, and scarcely breathing while hidden in the shadows. They weren't attempting to listen in, and they weren't searching for trouble, but trouble had found them. All of the names, plans, and whispers were spoken into the stagnant air. Then it dawned on me that this was not simply workplace politics or innocent gossip. This was serious. They had to decide whether to speak out, reveal everything, and run the danger of being targeted, or to remain quiet, act as if they had never heard, and let everything to play out. The decision's weight was like a stone pressing down. Their throat dried up and their heart raced. They felt a sinking sensation in their stomach. If they didn't, the scheme would go on unhindered. They would be triggering an irrevocable event if they moved ahead. Giving the incorrect word to the wrong person might worsen the situation, backfire, or draw attention away from them. Would they be taken seriously or denounced as dishonest, disruptive, or interfering in someone else's affairs? Would the plotters discover? Would they strike back? Would they change their strategy? Are they going to target them instead? Silence was the safest option. Act as if it never occurred and let someone else find out. However, the facts kept repeating like a broken record, and the words wouldn't leave their minds. The name, your name, repeated. Everything altered as a result. This was more than a power struggle between individuals they hardly knew, or concerning a random stranger. This was about you, a coworker, a respected individual, and someone who was unaware that they were being set up. They balled their fists. They couldn't and wouldn't leave the situation. The weight of the truth was oppressive, and their conscience burned. Someone had to know, but to whom? A manager? A companion? You? Or approach the authorities directly? For them, for you, for the conspirators who believed they were untouchable, everything would change if they spoke. But now there was no going back. After inhaling, they placed the call. This was nothing new. And it wasn't random. It had already occurred. The rumors, the plots, the silent devastation of a person who never anticipated it. Last year, one person, and before that, another. Different targets, different names, but the same strategy. Precise wording, deliberate betrayals, and covert meetings. Every time, the victim was unaware of it until it was too late. A life turned upside down by falsehoods, set in secret, a job destroyed, a reputation destroyed. They had previously done this and had always gotten away with it since. Up until this point, no one had ever paid attention or stopped them. The witness put it all together. The trends, the missed warnings, the way that for certain individuals, everything always came apart for no apparent reason. They moved like ghosts, leaving no trace, no fingerprints, no proof, just devastation. It wasn't poor luck, it was an accident. People who trusted them and wouldn't suspect anything until it was too late were the ones they meticulously selected as their victims. They turned allies into suspects and friends into adversaries. The real bad guys were constantly in the background, watching their plan come to fruition. So, by the time the harm was done, nobody understood where it had begun. However, things were different this time. Someone had heard the whispers before they became daggers, and someone had seen the shadows moving this time. Had the former victims ever had a chance? Or were they doomed as soon as their names were spoken? How many others had suffered such destruction? How many people have had their lives subtly ruined by a covert gathering that no one ever knew about? Like ice in the veins, the revelation struck. This was a pattern, a well-functioning machine, a system built to get rid of everyone who got in their way. Until the wrong person overheard the correct discussion, everything was flawless and infallible. It all weighed heavily on the witness. It was larger, deeper, and more evil than they had anticipated. It was no longer simply about you. It had to stop. No more victims, no more secrets, no more escaping punishment. This time, they would be the ones caught off guard. The truth would not be hidden. The shadows would not shield them, and they would be the ones under surveillance. Did you know that the top ascension nexus for selected ones is the Obsidian Inner Order? You do now, however. You may be surprised to learn that joining the Inner Order entitles you to weekly group calls with more than 450 other selected individuals. We also record these sessions so you may listen to them whenever you'd like. Not only is our secret Discord active, but it also has a wealth of the most intriguing discussions on the planet. We're discussing in-depth discussions on spiritual practices, targeted people, occult knowledge, diet optimization, and anything else you need to perfect your ascension. Here, those who have been selected get together to share knowledge, support one another, and access insights that aren't available on YouTube or anywhere else. For those who are interested, explore contemporary manifestation mechanics. Members get access to 3 chapters of our private grimoire, where they may learn how to use magical energies to further their objectives, master basic spellcraft for physical manifestation, and transform your home into a wealth magnet. Additionally, you'll get access to video specials that are so daring that the YouTube archons don't even want you to see them, as well as interviews with actual targeted people. This is a movement, not just a membership. What are you waiting for, then? Give up looking and begin climbing. The description contains the URL. There was no going back after the call was placed and the report was submitted. The truth's burden has been transferred. It was now in the hands of people who could take action. Every word, every detail, every hushed threat that had escaped the conspirators' lips were all carefully heard by the police. This was not a minor disagreement or office politics. It was a crime. Everything that the witness had heard was recorded, including names, places, and times. The officer's expression became stern. The case was developing. A discreet, methodical, and purposeful inquiry was started. Financial documents were located, phone logs were examined, and surveillance video was examined. The puzzle was fitting together piece by piece. Though cautious, the conspirators had not been thorough enough. They had left tiny, almost undetectable fissures, but pressure causes cracks to enlarge, and pressure was approaching. They were unaware that the walls they had concealed behind were closing in on them, that their names were now being spoken at a police station. Although they continued to move freely, maintained their confidence, and believed they were in charge, control was eroding. Now, their heedlessly stated remarks served as proof. What they were whispering was becoming a weapon. The researchers looked further. Former victims came forward, and old grievances reappeared. The same gang, the same strategies, the same devastation. A pattern started to take shape. This was a history of deceit that was now being exposed. It was more than just a single encounter. Then it happened. A phone call, a knock on the door, a question that was phrased perfectly. The change, the eerie sense that something was wrong, the first sign of danger, came to one of them first, then another. There was a problem. They were not as inviolable as they believed. People's perceptions of them altered, and the atmosphere surrounding them shifted. Someone was aware. Everything was beginning to fall apart as the first thread was removed. Underestimating you was the first error. Assuming their statements would remain buried was the second. Third, they believed they had time. They didn't. A phone call that went unanswered was the first crack, followed by another. Conversations were interrupted and meetings abruptly terminated. There was a problem. They didn't respond to the message one of them sent. Someone else phoned and went straight to voicemail. Panic struck. Who knew? They went back and reviewed the meeting, the rumors, and the well-outlined strategy. Had someone heard them? Was there anybody there? Not possible. They had been by themselves, had they not? Doubt crept in as the inquiries mounted. They began glancing over their shoulders in crowded spaces, scanning their surroundings, and keeping an eye on their backs. Like wildfire, paranoia spread. Every conversation seemed strange, and every look went on for too long. Was anybody discussing them? Was there anybody who had suspicions? The walls were drawing near. The only explanation was that someone had spoken. However, who? They have to move quickly. A meeting was convened, but this time there were no chances or outside ears. At first, the group sat in quiet. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but nobody wanted to speak or be the first to say it. Who talked, followed by silence, a change in the atmosphere, the implicit charge, the abrupt knowledge that there was no longer any trust. One vowed it wasn't them, and another followed suit. It didn't matter, however. They were already poisoned by doubt. Suddenly, everyone in the room was under suspicion. Desperation took over. Paper trails, mails, and phones were all obliterated. In case they were questioned, they made up fresh alibis, tales, and interpretations of events. Before the truth engulfed them, they believed they could change reality. However, it was too late. There was no turning back now that the damage had been done. The cracks had turned into fractures, and the unraveling had started. The first arrest caused a stir. Their sense of control was destroyed by the second. It was occurring. It was genuine. They were apprehended. Immediately, the gang disintegrated. Now, loyalty was irrelevant. The only thing that counted was survival. The first one broke. A bargain was made, a reduced sentence in return for a confession. They accepted it. Details were revealed and names were exchanged. After being kept secret, the plot was fully revealed. The others went into a frenzy. Some fled, some pleaded, and yet others denied everything. It didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming. Under them, the falsehoods upon which they had based their authority fell apart. The facts came together piece by piece, from security video, bank trails, witness testimony, and phone data. Their plan, their well-planned lie, was exposed to the world. The whispers had become news stories. They had formerly been revered, feared, and untouchable, but now they were nothing more than cowards in questioning rooms with frantic attempts to change history. Former allies were blamed, and accusations were made against one another. It was pitiful. They were the ones being dismantled, one by one, after years of dominating, harming, and manipulating others. They went down, reputations were damaged, jobs were lost, and their names became permanent stains. Others lost more: freedom, friendships, and families, since the law doesn't care about their desperate backtracking or explanations. Until the last remnant of their dominion fell, justice would continue to be served. Instead of destroying you as they had intended, they destroyed themselves. There was silence in the courtroom. Then the word reverberated like the last nail in the coffin: guilty. Others sat still. Some dropped their heads, and others gasped, as if truth could be erased by denial. It was unable to. Then came the harsh, cruel, and inevitable sentence. Others lost everything. Others were fined, and some were sacked. Prison is the worst of all. The law flourishes in the light, but they had been operating in the shadows for years. Old victims came forward, and their earlier transgressions reappeared. More was discovered by investigators than anybody had anticipated. This was more significant than simply you. It has never included a single plot or a single crime. It was a trend, a history of dishonesty, a line of lives lost. The law was now cleaning the home. One by one, their influence vanished. Their reputations were ruined. Their legacies were broken. Their authority was taken away. Their titles were revoked, and their assets were confiscated. Their demise made those who had formerly dreaded them chuckle. Mercy was not forthcoming, despite the voices that had murmured in the darkness now begging for it. Lies have boundaries. Actions have repercussions. Their justifications are irrelevant to justice. They buried themselves instead of you, as they had intended. No matter how meticulous, how covert, or how many times they have gotten away with it, evil plots inevitably go apart. There is always a way for the truth to surface. They believed they were infallible, in charge, and that no one would ever peek beyond the curtain. They were mistaken. There was always someone looking on, a quiet observer, a listening ear. One instance when conceit gave way to recklessness, and that was all it needed. They conspired in whispers, but justice requires evidence, and proof never fades, not loudness. More weight was attached to your name than they could have ever imagined. They targeted you for that reason. The reason for this was your strength, not your weakness. They sought to ruin you because they recognized something in you that they couldn't break, control, or manipulate. Power, however, does not originate from dishonesty, from shadows, or from secret plans in back rooms. Truth is the source of true power. You were underestimated, and they lost everything because of it, because their own conceit sealed their doom, and their own words ultimately led to their demise. What they intended to hurt you ended up being your win. There is always divine justice at play. Truth always defeats falsehoods, and light always reveals darkness. Therefore, don't be afraid of rumors, of those who plan behind your back, or of those who scheme. They are already losing, even if they aren't aware of it yet. The meeting that was supposed to ruin you ended up becoming their undoing. Their own conceit laid the trap, and their own words backfired. They believed they were in charge, that they could draw the strings from the darkness, and that no one would ever see them. They were mistaken. In justice, everything they spoke behind closed doors was yelled. You lost nothing because you were protected, not by luck or chance, but by the truth, while others lost everything. Truth always prevails. It always rises. They ought to have been aware, should have halted, and understood that lying is only effective for so long. However, they didn't. They believed they were unbeatable. They have lost all of their influence and authority, and their falsehoods have been buried under the weight of their own demise. What was supposed to shatter you instead made you stronger. Your testimony became the result of their nefarious plans. Just like them, justice operated in quiet, but justice never fails. Let this serve as a reminder that no plot remains undiscovered, no treachery remains undiscovered, and no falsehood endures forever. The people who conspire against you in secret will always be revealed in the light.